Hey, what's up, awesome? Just wanted to share with you how to interview guests on your podcast. I've been podcasting since 2009. Definitely want to share some tips with you on how I do that particular format right now. So the format goes 24 to 48 hours of what the guest has been up to. Let's just say the guest's name is Joe. Okay, so Joe, what have you been doing for the last 24 to 48 hours? And then from there, you go into who is Joe. Now, typically, Joe will answer that philosophically or a passion project or a career or different things like that. Joe will answer the question that way. Then from there, you go into the trials. Maybe how did you overcome that trial, which is the triumph portion. Then the current projects, future projects, promos, and you close out the show. So starting from the top, 24 to 48 hours. Now, even before I get to the 24 to 48 hours, one of the things that I want to make sure that I've already done is research the actual guest. So whether it's an Instagram, Facebook, YouTube video, whether it's if they have YouTube, I've watched some of their videos. If they're on Instagram, I've clicked or liked some of their pictures. If they're on Twitter, I've kind of did a little conversation with them via Twitter. So I've kind of built a little rapport with them, not as deep as the conversation will go into when it's actually the actual podcast, but I've built a little rapport with them before they actually come on the show. Now, pre-chat, before we even have a conversation that we're actually going to record that's going to be live on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and all those places, one of the things that I want to vet out is what can I share, what can I ask the guest, what's off limits, because certain things are off limits. Let's say Joe has certain things that he does not want to talk about on the show. I want to know that way ahead of time because I don't want to ask him something that he doesn't want to share on the actual show. I asked if they can potentially leave or make the show as PG as possible, because if it's as PG as possible, it's easier for me to edit post-production and get it out as quickly as possible. So I kind of vet all those things out at the top and maybe share, a few themes of what I want to name the show with them and how I want the conversation to go. I also share with the guests that I want to make sure that this is their show. So 90% of the time they're going to do most of the talking. 10% of the time is my time to ask the questions. How come? Why did you do this? Can you elaborate on that? All those things are vetted out at the pre-chat portion of the actual show. When we actually begin to record, everything that we've already built from the social media, me doing the research on the actual guest, to the pre-chat, now we're in the conversation, they already feel right at home. So asking them what's the 24 to 48 hours, what they've done there, they're willing to tell me exactly what's been happening with them. And what I'm doing there is taking notes, literally, what I can ask them from the 24 to 48 hours that can build into the conversation. And we can actually ride a 24 to 48 hour conversation all the way to the end of the show, because we may not even get to the actual bullet points that we have, but that's okay. But you were prepared to ask them those questions. So whatever they're talking about and they go 5-6 minutes or whatever, don't interrupt them. Let them talk, because they're your guest. They're supposed to be the one doing most of the talking anyway, not you, because you're the host. You're supposed to let them do what you can guide the conversation. You can definitely guide the conversation, but you want them to be the one speaking, because your listeners hear from you most of the time anyway. This is not your time to shine. It's time for your guests to shine. So from there you go to the who is Joe. We ask him that particular question, and then Joe will answer however he sees fit. And then from there we go into the trials, into the triumphs, and then they tell you some challenges that they overcame to get to where they are now, which leads right into the current projects that they're doing right now, which is fantastic. So they go into that particular conversation. And as they do that, even at this point, it's a back and forth conversation. You're asking them questions, and sometimes they'll even ask you questions. Well, why are you doing what you're doing? Why did you decide to go that route? So now it goes from just an interview process to an actual tea and testimony, if you will, kind of conversation between you and the guest, and you guys build a bond as that's happening real time. And that is great. So as long as they're doing most of the talking, even if you have to cut out the dead silence or the pregnant pause, if you will, post-production, that's fine, because you can always edit that out post-production. Don't even worry about that. Just keep having a conversation. Let them talk. Ask why questions, because why typically expands a lot of thought process. it actually gets rid of canned answers, because some guests, if they go on a lot of shows, they already have canned answers for the questions that you may ask or they've heard. So when you have a why question, or you ask them a different question that they're not used to having, now they have to really think about the question that you just asked, and then find a way to answer it. And they'll probably even say, you know what, no one has really ever asked me that question before on an interview. That's interesting. The way you were able to pull that out, that's when you know it's real, and that's when you know it's genuine as you're having the conversation with the guest. So towards the end of the conversation with the guest, as you're having the conversation with them and everything is going well, you're getting towards the end, they give their promo, and after they give their promo, you should close the show. And here's another, and the reason I'm saying close the show is because it seems like there are certain individuals, maybe they're just starting the interview process, that they feel adding filler to the show after it's done is adding context to the conversation. The filler doesn't add context to the conversation. If the show is 28 minutes and you're able to finish it at 28:50, then close it out at 28:50. There's no reason for you to continue to have a conversation that is not going to have any value to what you just had with the guest, right? There's no reason to have any additional conversation that will sound like filler just to hear yourself speak. Because I know after a while, you have the microphone, you just want to hear yourself speak. It's great that you can do a podcast, you have your own platform, that's great. But when the guest is on, it's all about the guest. When the show is done, close it out. Do their promo, then do your promo, then close out the show. Keep it as tight knit as possible, from your intro all the way to your outro, and however you want to do that. And that's pretty much the format that I use to interview guests. So just to recap, I ask the guests the last 24 to 48 hours of what they've done, and then from there we'll ask them who they are, who is Joe, what's some of the trials and things that you faced, that you overcame, and then that leads right into the triumph, and then that leads right into their current project, whatever they're doing right now, and then from there you begin to prepare to close out, and then you just keep the show as tight as possible, and then you add your promo, then you close the show, and that is the actual formula. It's a skeleton formula that you can use with pretty much anyone. Even if you weren't prepared to record, or at the last minute the guest said, you know what, I'm coming on, you have that particular skeleton and you're able to do well with it, and the show will still come out as if you were as prepared as you were after you did, let's say, 3 or 4 days of research. So I wanted to share that with you. Hope that helps. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace.